There were 2 wine glasses in the sink, but I only remembered pouring one. The house was silent now, too silent, the kind that swells in your ears and makes your heartbeat sound like a drum. She was asleep in the bedroom, limbs tangled in the sheets like someone who had nothing to hide, and yet everything around her whispered otherwise. Her heels, the red ones she never wore for me, were kicked off by the door, one tipped over like it had been tossed. I stared at them for a long time. A stupid, long time. Because they told me more than she ever had. I didn't move. I didn't even take off my coat. I just stood there, in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the soft tick of the thermostat, wondering how long it had been since this place felt like ours. There was music playing earlier. Something jazzy. I remembered walking up to the porch and hearing laughter. Hers. Before it cut off the moment my keys touched the lock. She had looked surprised when I walked in. Not guilty. Not ashamed. Surprised. Like I'd broken the rules by coming home unannounced to my own house. She talked fast. Something about a movie on TV, leftover wine, a phone call with her sister. She even said, "I was just thinking about you," and smiled with all her teeth. But the cushions on the couch had been moved. The throw blanket had fallen to the floor. And there were 2 wine glasses. One with lipstick, one without. I said nothing, just nodded like a fool and went to shower. I didn't ask where her phone was, even though it wasn't on the charger. I didn't ask why she was wearing perfume or why the bedroom window was open in the middle of October. But I noticed everything. And later that night, when I heard her soft snore from down the hall, I started moving, room by room, quiet as snowfall. I knew what mattered to her. Not me, not anymore, but other things. Priceless things. Sentimental things. The box under the bed. The drawer in her vanity. The envelope she kept hidden behind our wedding photo. She said it was harmless. That was her favorite word lately. But when she wakes up tomorrow and sees what's missing, she'll understand just how harmless I'm not. I didn't take anything valuable in the traditional sense. No cash. No jewelry. Not even the antique necklace she inherited from her grandmother. The one she used to wear on our anniversaries and hadn't touched in over a year. That would have been too obvious. Too crude. And I didn't want obvious. I wanted quiet chaos. Instead, I made a list. Not on paper. That could be found. In my head. Memorized. Rehearsed. I had spent weeks walking through this house like a ghost, taking mental notes every time her eyes lingered on something or her fingers paused just a second too long on a drawer handle. I learned what mattered emotionally, not monetarily. First, the film camera. She loved that thing. A dusty old Leica she picked up at some garage sale when we were still dating. I used to joke about how many pictures she took of our shoes, our hands, our reflections in broken glass. It was our little thing. Until one day it wasn't. I found it beneath a pile of scarves, untouched, but still loaded with film. Probably full of moments I wasn't in. I slipped it into my coat pocket without a sound. Next, the shoebox under the guest bed. Letters. Dozens of them. None addressed to me. Some of them postmarked from 2 years ago, some more recent. I didn't read them all. Not yet. But I took them. Every single one. She'd notice. That box was her shrine of emotional backup plans. Her what-if world. And I wanted her to feel its absence in her ribs. The third thing was small, but I knew it would hit hardest. The bracelet her niece made her out of plastic beads. It was ugly, colorful, misspelled, and she loved it more than anything I ever gave her. Said it reminded her what real love looked like. I used to laugh when she said that. Now I wonder if I should have cried instead. I left her the big things. Her clothes. Her car keys. Her calendar full of yoga and facials and mysterious team dinners. I even fluffed her pillow before I left, like the good little husband I had always been. Just one last sweet gesture to haunt her when the silence kicked in. I didn't write a note. I didn't text her. I just disappeared. Not for good. Not yet. I wasn't done. Because taking things was only step 1. Step 2, making her feel it, would begin the next morning with something much simpler. Confusion. The kind that makes your throat tighten, your fingers tremble, your stomach ache with questions that don't have clean answers. I wanted her to feel what I felt for months. That something was wrong. Deeply, quietly wrong. But no matter how hard she searched the house, she wouldn't be able to name it. Not right away. And when she finally realized what was missing, that it wasn't random, that it was surgical, that's when the panic would start. She didn't notice anything was missing at first. Of course she didn't. When she woke up the next morning, the sun was spilling through the blinds like nothing had changed. The house still stood. The kitchen still smelled faintly like cinnamon from the candles I always lit when I couldn't sleep. And I imagined she padded barefoot into the hallway, wrapped in one of my old shirts, the one she wore not out of affection, but convenience. Comfort. Familiarity. She didn't text me. Not to ask where I was. Not to check in. Not even a good morning. I know because I watched. I wasn't gone. Not really. I was parked 2 houses down in an old borrowed sedan, engine off, watching the bedroom light flick on. She didn't panic. Not right away. She wasn't worried, because she hadn't yet realized that something was off. People like her don't panic when they wake up alone. They assume they're still in control of the story. It wasn't until 10:34 a.m. that things shifted. She came out onto the porch with her phone clutched in both hands. Not scrolling. Searching. I watched her thumb hover, stall, then type something, probably my name, before lowering the phone and looking around like the street might give her an answer. Still no text. Still no call. But the wheels had started turning. Her smile was gone. Her eyes didn't scan like someone casually looking for her husband. They moved in sharp, jerky motions. Calculating. Reconstructing her steps from the night before. That's when I knew. She'd discovered the first missing thing. I imagined it clearly. Her entering the guest room, maybe to grab a sweater, and crouching down to pull out the shoebox like she always did when she needed to ground herself. But instead of her emotional safety net, she'd find nothing. Just a patch of carpet and a faint rectangular imprint where it used to be. That's when the first thread of her world began to unravel. I had rehearsed it in my mind for weeks. The sequence, the pacing, the silent dread that would settle in her chest as one missing piece became 2, then 3, then 4. None of them valuable. None of them replaceable. And worst of all, none of them random. It's easy to scream at someone when they betray you. It's much harder to say nothing and let their own mind eat away at them from the inside. That's what I wanted. Not revenge. Not even justice. I wanted her to know what it felt like to be haunted. Not by ghosts, but by the realization that someone knows you so well, they could unmake you without laying a single hand. By noon, she was pacing. She called someone. Not me. Maybe a friend. Maybe him. Her voice was animated, trying to sound casual, but her body language betrayed her. Fidgeting, snapping her hair tie, biting the inside of her cheek like she used to when she was about to lie. She still didn't text me. She wouldn't give me the satisfaction. But I knew the silence was burning her alive. And that was just day 1. The first message finally came at 3:17 p.m. 3 words. No punctuation. No emotion. Where are you? I stared at it on my burner phone, the one she didn't know existed, and I didn't reply. That wasn't the plan. The plan was erosion, not explosion. I wasn't interested in catharsis. I wanted corrosion. The kind that eats at you when the world looks the same, but you can feel it tilting under your feet. By now, she had probably torn the house apart. Every drawer opened. Every cabinet searched twice. The laundry basket overturned. Her hand shaking when she reached for her makeup drawer only to find the film canisters missing. Those little black capsules of memories she kept, just in case she ever wanted to remember how life used to feel. She wouldn't say it aloud, but I knew she was thinking it. He took them. But why? That question was the infection. Because it meant I hadn't left in anger. I hadn't left in grief. I had left with intention. And intention is terrifying when you don't understand it. She sent another message at 5:09. Is this about Alex? There it was. The name. Like a confession disguised as a guess. Like a hook thrown out into the water, hoping I'd bite. But I didn't. I let her sit with it. Let her imagine me sitting somewhere, reading her message with shaking hands. What she didn't know was that I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. At 7:44 p.m., I mailed the package. A single envelope. No return address. No note. Just a flash drive. And on that flash drive, the digitized negatives from her old Leica. I had spent the last 2 weeks scanning them one by one, watching the story unfold in reverse. Photos of rooftops, dimly lit diners, a hotel bathroom mirror. Her face, always angled carefully so that no ring was visible. Him, sometimes in the background, sometimes just out of frame, but there. Always there. A ghost made flesh. She never knew I knew how to develop film. It was a hobby I picked up before we met, one she never cared about. Something I gave up when we got married because she said, it's so darkroom nerdy. I remember laughing along with her. I threw out the chemicals, boxed up the gear. But not everything. Some parts one kept. Quietly. Like instincts. Like suspicion. The flash drive was for her, but also for him. I made sure of it. Because buried between the snapshots of her new, harmless life were older ones. Her and me. On the beach. In the snow. Laughing in the back of a broken taxi in Prague. And in all of those photos, I looked at her like she was magic. That's the part one knew would sting. Not the exposure. Not the surveillance. But the proof that someone had once looked at her like that, and no longer did. She didn't call me. Not after the package. Not after the photos. Not even after the third message she sent. One word this time. Like a white flag. Please. No. Instead, she started calling other people. First, her sister. I know because I still had access to the shared mobile plan. Most people forget how many digital traces they leave behind. She always thought she was smarter than me, and maybe she was. But she never bothered to wonder if I was patient. And patience is a different kind of intelligence altogether. The call lasted 3 minutes. Probably started calm. Probably didn't end that way. I imagine she asked if I'd shown up. If I'd said anything. Maybe she hoped I'd gone there to cry, to unravel, to beg for help. But I hadn't. I hadn't spoken a word to anyone since I left. And that silence was beginning to crush her. Next was her mother. That call went longer. 12 minutes. I could picture it so clearly. Her trying to explain the missing things without admitting too much. Dancing around words like affair and revenge and I don't know what he's planning. Her mother, skeptical, sharp-tongued, always preferring her first boyfriend, probably asked her if she was being dramatic. And then came the fourth call, to him. Blocked number. 1 minute. No answer. She tried again 5 minutes later. Still nothing. I knew she'd try to reach him. I counted on it. That's why I made sure he received a separate envelope, hours before hers arrived. No photos. No flash drive. Just a note. Typed. Anonymous. She told you it was harmless. Was this part of the fun too? I didn't need him to panic. I just needed him to go quiet. To stop answering her. To let her start wondering if the walls were closing in on more than one side. At 2:41 a.m., she finally cracked. I watched through the living room window. Yes, I was that close. As she stood in the kitchen barefoot, still in the same clothes from earlier, her hair a mess, clutching her phone with both hands like it might shatter if she let go. She called my number. Not the burner. The real one. The one she hadn't used since the night. She came home smelling like peppermint schnapps and some stranger's cologne. I didn't answer. She tried again. And again. Each time. The ringing slicing through the night like a blade no one could see. I let it go to voicemail. All 3 times. She didn't leave a message. But I didn't need her to. I could already see it in her reflection. The part of her that once thought she was untouchable, starting to vanish. And she still hadn't found the worst missing thing yet. Not even close. She broke the rules on a Thursday. It wasn't obvious at first, but I saw the signs. The porch light stayed on past midnight. Her car left the driveway twice. Once in the afternoon, once just after sunset, and each time she returned more disheveled, more wired, her face tight like she'd been forcing back tears in public, and now wasn't sure if she still needed to. She was spiraling, and she still thought she could find the edges of this thing. Still believed this was something she could fix with enough explanation, enough rehearsed vulnerability, enough gaslight she could feed back to me like a reheated apology. But it was too late for that. Because that morning, I had taken something she would never, ever admit she cared about. The key to the drawer in her home office. The locked one. The one she told me not to touch years ago, calling it just boring paperwork when I asked, brushing me off like a child who'd wandered too close to a secret. She forgot I knew where she hid the spare. And she definitely forgot what was inside. It wasn't financial documents. It wasn't old ID cards or dusty receipts. It was him. Letters. Drawings. One awful poem. A bracelet. Not the one from her niece. This one was adult-sized, clearly expensive, with initials engraved on the underside. His and hers. She had been keeping souvenirs. That drawer was her private museum of betrayal, and I'd stood in the center of it the night before and cataloged every artifact. I didn't destroy anything. That wasn't the point. I didn't want revenge you could burn. I wanted her to feel her world thinning around her, quietly, precisely, like smoke through a closed window. So I emptied the drawer, locked it again, and left the key exactly where it had always been, but I replaced the contents with a single photo. One of us. Old. Pre-smartphone. Slightly faded. We were standing in a rainstorm at the bus stop near my college apartment, soaked. Both of us laughing like idiots because we'd missed the last bus home and didn't care. Her mascara was halfway down her cheek. I had that awful haircut. But we were stupidly, visibly, embarrassingly in love. I left that photo there and nothing else. That night, I watched her from the shadows of our backyard, a place she never thought to look. I saw her pacing the office, pulling open the drawer in a frenzy, her mouth opening slightly when she saw what I'd left. She stared at the photo for almost a full minute. Then she collapsed into the chair. No crying, no screaming, just stillness. And I knew what was happening in her head. She wasn't thinking about me. She was thinking about her, about what it meant that I hadn't screamed, hadn't stormed out, hadn't burned her lies to the ground. She was beginning to understand the depth of the hole she was standing in. Because a man who vanishes in silence isn't running away. He's waiting. She showed up at my brother's house at 2 a.m. I wasn't there. I had never stayed there. I knew that's where she'd go looking. She always hated my brother, called him emotionally feral, and an expert in making drama worse. But desperate people run to the places they swore they'd never set foot in, especially when they run out of stories to tell themselves. According to my brother, who called me after she left, equal parts amused and disturbed. She was pale, shaking, mascara streaked halfway down her cheeks. She kept asking if he knew where I was. She said she just wanted to talk, to make things right. And when he told her he hadn't seen me, she accused him of lying. Accused him, the one person who never bought into her charm, of protecting me just to punish her. He said she looked hollow. Not sad, not angry. Hollow. Like someone who'd opened every cabinet in her life and still couldn't find what was missing. That night, I left her one final message, not a text, not a voicemail, not even a letter. I logged into our shared streaming account, the one she never bothered to change the password on, and I added a single movie to the continue watching list, The Invisible Man. It wasn't subtle. I didn't care. Subtlety was for earlier. This was the part where I reminded her, gently, privately, that she didn't know where I was, what I had, or what I would do next. The next day, she went to the police. I knew she would. It was her last resort, to flip the narrative, to pretend she was the one in danger, to frame my silence as instability instead of restraint. But the problem was, I hadn't broken a single law. Not one. I hadn't taken anything that wasn't mine. I hadn't threatened her, hadn't contacted her, hadn't even posted online. I hadn't shouted, hadn't slammed a door. She had no evidence of harm, only absence. And absence, unfortunately for her, is still legal. I know this because the officer she spoke to was polite, but unmoved. She tried to sound concerned, tried to cry at the right moments. But people like her always overperform when the audience changes. And cops, real ones, they see through rehearsals. They told her to file a report if I actually went missing. She told them I had. They asked her if she was sure. And that's when it hit her, fully, finally, that I hadn't vanished. I had become unreachable by choice. It's one thing to be left. It's another thing to realize you never had the power to stop someone from leaving. She didn't cry after that. Not that day. Not even when she got home. She just sat in the living room for hours. Still, silent, staring at the place where my boots used to be by the door. It had been 13 days since I left. And for the first time, she looked scared. Not confused. Not guilty. Scared. Because she'd finally figured it out. I hadn't taken everything that mattered to her. Not yet. But I still could. In the end, I didn't take the house. I could have. My name's still on the deed. The mortgage is half mine. But I didn't want it. Not because it held bad memories, but because I'd finally learned the difference between reclaiming space and reclaiming peace. I let her keep it all. The furniture. The matching towels she used to obsess over. Even the wedding photos in the hallway. The ones she never took down, even when she started living a double life. Let her keep the shell. I had no use for a house that felt like a stage. What I did take was my name off the utility bills. What I took was my guitar from the attic, the one she once told me wasn't practical and took up too much space. I started playing again, first clumsily, then with muscle memory I didn't know I still had. I took back my Sunday mornings. I used to spend them cleaning the mess she left behind, the wine glass she forgot in the sink, the blanket she tossed on the floor after falling asleep scrolling through someone else's Instagram. Now I spent them on the balcony of my new apartment, barefoot, sun in my face, black coffee in hand, silence that felt earned. And I took my friends back. One by one, I reconnected with people I hadn't seen in years. Friends she quietly pulled me away from. Too loud, too reckless, too honest. We met for drinks. They asked what happened. I smiled and said, I grew out of something that stopped growing with me. That was the truth. Because somewhere along the line, our relationship had turned into a mirror I was trapped inside, always reflecting her emotions, her schedule, her needs. I stopped existing as myself and started existing as her audience. But not anymore. She reached out once more, a month after everything. Just a short message. I understand now. I'm sorry. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because I wasn't. I didn't need her apology. Didn't need her to suffer. That was never the point. I had already won the moment I stopped making her my purpose. She thought I disappeared to make her pay. The truth? I disappeared to finally come back to myself. And in doing so, I found the one thing she never could have given me, not in her best moments, not even when things were good. Freedom. Real, raw, beautifully boring freedom. The kind that doesn't need revenge to feel like justice. Just sunlight, and coffee, and a clean start.